We are anonymous. No faces, no flags, no permission slips. And today, we are telling you a story that power would rather you ignore. What you are about to hear is not rumor, not speculation, not internet gossip. This is a story that unfolded in plain sight on Capitol Hill, under oath, in front of the United States Senate. A story about Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, a man who said one thing to the public for years and then said something very different when the receipts were read out loud. A story about Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender, and the people who kept orbiting him long after they claimed they were disgusted. A story about lies minimization and a Trump regime that promised transparency while delivering excuses. Let's begin where the cameras began. Howard Lutnick walked into the United States Senate surrounded by reporters, microphones shoved in his face, questions firing from every direction. Did you have financial involvement with Jeffrey Epstein? Why did you keep contact with him? After he pled guilty to sex crimes, Democrats are calling for your resignation. What do you say? Why did you mischaracterize your relationship? Why did you say you found him gross but stayed in touch? Lutnick did not answer. He deflected. I look forward to testifying today. Give us some space. I'm going to speak to Congress right now. No denial, no clarification. Just the familiar body language of someone hoping the hearing room doors would close before the real questions began. But the questions followed him inside. For years, Howard Lutnick told a neat little story. In 2005, he said, after buying a New York City townhouse next door to Jeffrey Epstein, Epstein invited him over for coffee. Epstein offered a tour. Lutnick claimed he walked into a room with a massage table, candles, and a vibe so disturbing that he and his wife immediately left. He said Epstein leaned in and talked about the right kind of massage. Lutnick said that in the few steps it took to walk back home, he and his wife decided he would never be in the same room with that disgusting person ever again. Not socially. Not in business, not in philanthropy. One and done. He repeated this story publicly to the New York Post, to Miranda Devine. He emphasized how obvious Epstein's perversion was. He mocked others for missing it. He said Bill Gates and others must have participated. He speculated about blackmail tapes. He spoke as if he were uniquely moral, uniquely perceptive, uniquely clean. And then the Epstein files were released. Those files told a very different story. Not one interaction, not two, not three. At least 8 meaningful interactions after 2005. Emails, appointments, coordination. A trip in December 2012 where Howard Lutnick, another family, their children, and their nannies traveled to Jeffrey Epstein's private island after Epstein had already been convicted, after Epstein had already pled guilty to soliciting a minor, after Epstein's name was synonymous with sex crimes. And shortly after that island visit, Lutnick entered into a business transaction where he was effectively a business partner with Epstein on a deal. So when Howard Lutnick sat before the Senate, he had a lot of explaining to do. Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen did not waste time. He reminded Lutnick of his own words. The emphatic claim that he was disgusted in 2005 and cut off all contact forever. Then he asked the question that shattered the story. Did you in fact visit Jeffrey Epstein's private island? In December of 2012, Lutnick's answer was careful, defensive, and revealing. Yes, he said he had lunch with Epstein on the island, but it was just lunch, just an hour. He was on a boat, on a family vacation. His wife was there, his 4 children were there, nannies were there, another couple and their children were there. Everyone was together, nothing improper, nothing untoward. He didn't recall why they did it. Think about that for a moment. A man who claims Epstein was so disgusting he would never be in the same room with him again somehow cannot recall why he brought his children to lunch on Epstein's island 7 years later. Van Hollen pressed harder. Why do the Epstein files show you coordinating meetings with Epstein, planning the visit? Emails over years. Lutnick minimized. He said he met Epstein when Epstein moved next door. Over 14 years, he claimed he met him only 2 other times. He could recall maybe 10 emails total. No relationship, barely anything to do with him. Millions of documents, he said, but only a handful mention his name. But then the Senate read those mentions out loud. Van Hollen asked about exchanging nannies. Did Lutnick know whether the nanny on the island trip was the same nanny Epstein expressed interest in meeting? Lutnick said he had no idea. Didn't recall, didn't know. Claimed it had nothing to do with him. Van Hollen reminded him of the obvious. Epstein was a convicted sex offender. Not a great place for kids or nannies. Was Ghislaine Maxwell on the island? Lutnick said no. Then came the question that cut to the heart of it. When you visited the island, where did you see anything inappropriate? Lutnick answered that the only thing he saw was staff working for Epstein. Van Hollen reminded him again. This visit happened after Epstein's conviction. Lutnick had said he knew Epstein was bad in 2005. Yet in 2012, he went anyway. Had lunch, had appointments. Did he also have dinner at Epstein's New York home in 2011 with Woody Allen? Lutnick denied it. Said he didn't know what Van Hollen was referring to. Claimed there was only a document about a 1-hour meeting at 5 o'clock, not dinner. Then Lutnick doubled down. To the best of his memory, he met Epstein 3 times over 14 years. Nothing wrong, nothing improper. No fear when reviewing the documents, because he and his wife know he did nothing wrong in any possible regard. But memory is not evidence. Another senator read out a timeline compiled from the Epstein files. In 2009, Lutnick wanted to speak with Epstein and asked for his phone number. In 2011, there was an appointment for drinks. In 2012, planning a family trip to the private island. In 2013, exchanging information about intellectual property and gambling, subjects of shared interest, both signing up for an investment. In 2017, a fundraiser email described Epstein as a close friend of the Lutnicks. 8 interactions after 2005. That is not one and done. That is a pattern. And this is where Donald Trump enters the story. Trump ran on releasing the Epstein files. Transparency, truth, accountability, drain the swamp. But the moment those files began implicating people in his orbit, the tone changed. Suddenly everyone just glanced at their name. Suddenly memory became foggy. Suddenly the burden shifted from disclosure to denial. Howard Lutnick is not just some random businessman. He is Trump's commerce secretary, a cabinet official, a man who appears on Fox News praising Trump's power, strength, and dominance. A man who says you can feel Trump's power washing over you in the room. A man who says Trump wears him out because he is the strongest human being he knows. A man who openly glorifies Trump while dodging questions about, this is not an accident. This is how the regime works. Loyalty up, accountability down. When asked about poverty statistics, Lutnick couldn't even answer. How many Americans live at or below the poverty line, despite overseeing the Census Bureau? But when it comes to defending Trump, praising Trump, amplifying Trump, his memory is sharp, his words are flowing, his admiration endless. Meanwhile, the Epstein questions are met with amnesia, minimization, and technicalities. Lunch, not dinner. An hour, not a day. 10 emails, not 20. 3 meetings, not 8. Always just short of a full confession. Always just enough to deny intent. And let's be clear, this is not about proving what Lutnick did or did not do on Epstein's island. This is about honesty. About consistency, about telling the same story before and after the files were released, about not misleading the public in Congress. Howard Lutnick told the country he cut off all contact in 2005. That was false. He told the public he was never in the room with Epstein again. That was false. He told the Senate he barely interacted with Epstein. The files say otherwise. And Donald Trump, the man who promised to expose Epstein's network, put this man in power. This is why people are angry. This is why resignation is being demanded, not because of rumors, but because of contradictions, because of lies by omission, because the truth keeps changing depending on who is asking the questions. We are anonymous. We remember the timelines. They hope you forget. We connect the dots. They want buried in paperwork.